Three. Hi. Okay. So we are kicking off here on how to nab an off-market listing, which is, I think we get that question all of the time. And if not explicitly, then certainly implicitly when people are like, how can I find something special? How can I find something that's not out there? And in a super competitive seller's market, getting a listing off market is one of the ways that you can find a house you really love, even if it might not be one of the ways that you save a ton of money doing it, which we could talk about also. But so I'm Megan Brenwhite. I am the head of the Upstate real estate team, licensed associate broker, Keller Williams Hudson Valley North. I see that on our team here, from our team, we have Angelica Ferguson, the lead buyer agent, Brian Dentes, who's another buyer's agent, Jem Brown, our chief of staff, and I think that's everybody from our team who's here today. I am always so much happier when people are like writing stuff in chat and we feel like this is kind of like a discussion rather than just like a one-way lecture of sorts. So please, if you have questions or comments or whatever, just like throw them up in the chat. If you want to just like write your name and like what you're looking for, or if you're a potential buyer or whatever it is, feel free to do that now, or where you live now. That's always cool. So Angelica and I were talking about this topic a little earlier today, and there's a bunch of different things to cover, I think. So maybe I'll even just start with like what is an on-market listing versus off-market. So, off-market means that it's not listed on a multiple listing service. I think that's the generally accepted term. So we have in the area that we work in, there are about 5 different multiple listing services that cover the entire area, which is around 10 counties, which is really a lot. And a lot of, agents and people kind of cover their territories like one MLS. If you're in New York City, the MLS isn't even quite as critical, although it's a different story. There is a little bit of a gray area there, I would say, which is there are for sale by owners that are on multiple listing services that use kind of like these, I don't know, I can't remember what you call them, but they're just like brokerages that you pay them like $50 or $100 or something, and then they just like put it on the MLS for you. So the agents, they're not really represented by an agent, but they are online essentially. So the multiple listing services are a way that agents share the information with each other about what is listed. It's the way that the information gets syndicated out to Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, all of those things. So that's why, like, that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes you can see, so you could see a for sale by owner on Zillow. They can also input that directly, but you could also see something that looks like it's marketed by an agent, but is kind of like this midway point where it's a very low cost, low budget service. So the reason somebody might want to not put something on the market, which is a question we get all the time, like why would you not want to do it that way, would be because a whole bunch of reasons. One is that they're private. They just don't, they either don't want to get their name out there. They don't want to get their house out there. They don't want people coming into their home. Obviously, we saw this more during COVID because people really didn't want people to, like any more people extra coming into their home than who already had to. But they're, showing a house is a pain in the butt. If you like live there, like it's annoying. Like if you have kids and dogs or just one person who's not pristine, like you have to clean it the whole time and get out of the house. And so many people are working from home now also that like that can be even a little bit more of a burden to the seller to get out of the house for each showing. So if they can get a situation that's they're, happy with without having to go through that, that can be sometimes pretty great. And what you give up as a seller to list something or to sell something off market is you give up a little bit of certainty as to what the market would actually bear. So when we do like when we bring out the full arsenal and we have the amazing photographer who's on our team and we get it in front of the like 35,000 people almost on Instagram and our multiple thousand person mailing list, and it's on every MLS and every agent can see it. Like if that house doesn't sell at that point, especially with our team, because I feel like we do a really good job. Like we're not like there's not going to be like bad photos or a weird description or we forgot to consider something, then that probably means that that price is too high for the market. So when we're working with sellers, we can say to people like, oh, hey, just FYI, like over 6,000 people viewed the video of your house and 2,000 people visited the website and we've had 25 showings and it hasn't sold. So that means the price might be too high. If you sell it off market, you're never really going to know. That's the truth, right? So you pick a price that you think, or like, when we're working with clients to sell something off market, we work with them to pick a price that we think is somewhere that's going to be something like what they would get in the market. That's the goal. Usually what we do is that, like, if we're going, I know for us at least, if we were going to sell a home off market, and I'll explain the mechanics of that, the price, like let's say it was going to be listed at $750. The off-market price for that home might be $775 or might even be $800. Because if it's a house that there's a chance for the seller that they're, it's like, we're feeling pretty good about $750, but like it has some pretty cool attributes that may lead to a multiple offer situation. And we know that our multiple offer situations lead to around 15 to 20% above ask. So the off-market price you charge could be higher, is generally higher than the list price. So if that makes sense. So now the next question might be, why would a buyer pay something that's going to be higher than the list price? And that is because the seller in an off-market situation has essentially pretty much all of the negotiating power, because the seller can say, if I don't like this deal that's coming up off market for some reason, I'm just going to put it on the MLS. I'm going to get that big exposure. We're going to market it publicly. So the buyer in that situation could say, look, this house will be listed at like $750. They're asking us to pay $800. But if it goes on the market, we have a chance that we're either going to lose it or we might have to pay $850 to get it. So it's all about, like, you're kind of weighing your risks essentially. And there are a couple of ways that, like, so it helps to understand the reasoning of why people would buy or sell off market, but the mechanics of it is also kind of interesting. So there are people who do for sale by owners. And I will say for the record that if you see a for sale by owner, I would still recommend calling a buyer's agent to represent you in that situation, even if the seller of that house doesn't want to pay the commission to the buyer's agent. So the commission, essentially what happens is the seller sort of pays the commission generally for the buyer's agent and the listing agent. They give a certain commission to the listing agent, who then offers out a fee through the multiple listing service to cooperating agents. So the seller could say, nah, I'm doing for sale by owner because I don't want anything to do with agents, blah, blah, blah. So then your option that you would have is that you would pay for the, generally, let's say 2.5%, 3%, whatever the buyer's agent might ask to represent you in this market. And that is, with a good agent, that is money so well spent. So well spent, because, like, as is what Angelica and I were talking about. It's like, if you've bought a condo before, like a co-op, but not a house, if you bought a house in a different state, if you're a first-time home buyer, there are so many reasons why you would want to be working with an agent. And I know in our case, like, our team is so supportive that, I mean, we get calls and text messages with relative frequency from people going through this process. Even not with a for sale by owner, but even like working with a listing agent, and they say, hey, can you like help us? Can you give us some advice on this? And it's like, we're not legally representing you, and there's no real way to do it, and we have to focus our attentions on our clients. That includes the whole process from start to finish, but also after the home is purchased, if somebody calls, like, a lot of times I get questions, say, hey, do you know who is our good contractor? And it's like, I cannot give that information to people who are not our clients because there just aren't enough of them. Somebody asked me last week, can you whatever help promote our Airbnb? And I was like, I can't, so so I think that like and I will tell you that we have real estate agents. We have a number of real estate agents from New York City who work with our team to represent them as buyers agents. So this is like, it's just like being an agent, in one area is not the same as doing it everywhere. So there's for sale by owners that we kind of understand. You could see those on Zillow, you could see those on Craigslist. Those are usually easy to find. The things that are a little bit harder to find that we can sometimes find for clients are things that have expired recently. So we have ways to like look for houses that are not on the market, and depending on how the cold, like there's a lot of things that have happened through the National Association of Realtors and also through New York State in the past year that have changed how we have to handle some of these things. But so we're no longer, as real estate agents, it's back again. There's a ban on cold calling potential sellers. So you can't just call people and say, hey, I want to list your house. You can, though, always call somebody and say, hey, I have a buyer who's amazing for your house. Would you consider selling it? That was okay this whole time. So it's, sorry, not always okay to call that, again, there were times when that was definitely not okay, but that there are ways to reach out to expired listings. And it could be something that expired 4 years ago. If there's a house that we have in our minds or that you see that is like, it just didn't sell for some reason, and maybe the time is right for you and the seller to make a deal. The most like normal off-market listing, other than for sale by owner, is what can be called pocket listings or whisper listings in some markets. And that's when a seller has hired a real estate agent. Generally, it's when a seller has hired a real estate agent or a team to represent them, but they're not marketing it to the full MLS. They're not putting it on the multiple listing service. And those are the ones that like are, could be, again, for a number of reasons. It may also be what we do on our team is when we're getting a new listing and we know it's going to be listed like in the next, let's say 4 to 6 weeks, we have a special channel on our team Slack channel called Off Market Listings. And so as soon as we know we're going to list it, we put the photos up from the original listing appointment. We have it set a price with the sellers if they want us to do it that way. And then the buyer's agents on our team all learn about it and can start to show it to their individual clients. So this is the thing that got a little bit weird this year. The National Association of Realtors had a new sort of rule or law called the about clear cooperation, which is really meant to prevent pocket listings or these kind of listings. But what it says is that we can't publicly market anything that's not on the MLS. That's it. So it used to be like 2 years ago, if we had one of these listings, we weren't going to market it on the MLS. We could absolutely still put it on Instagram. We could buy ads for it. We could have it open it. We could do whatever the heck we wanted. We just couldn't. We just like wouldn't put it on the MLS. So particularly for a team like ours that has such a big reach, we could sell houses like that all day long, Now with the new rule, you technically can't do anything publicly. It has to be sent one-on to individual clients. So what that means is that essentially if we have, and I don't know how many clients, Angelica, what would you say, like, if you had to guess, like, how many clients our team is working with buyers, like, at one point in time? Because, there are people who are, like, really actively looking. There are people who kind of, let's keep an eye out for something amazing. It must be.
Yeah, so many of our clients are like.
Oh, wait, I think you're on mute. Oh, no, I turned my sound off.
Oh.
Okay, go.
I would say so many of our clients are in that, like, I have no urgency to buy a house. I just want to buy the right thing. I'm ready to go as soon as you send me the right house. So.
But it would be.
I think we have definitely over 100 clients that we're kind of actively working with.
I was
Right
just going to say, like, I would say it's probably over 100 that like we're pretty actively working with, and then maybe another 1 or 2 that are like kind of back burner. And then, but again, like, so this is the group that's going to hear about these listings that we have, not the 35,000 people on Instagram. So that is another reason to be working, with one of the buyer's agents on our team. Because if you say, it's like this, and this happens a lot. Like I would say, I don't know, maybe 20% of our deals are like this now. Like every 5th listing goes, never makes it to market, essentially, because something comes in and we're like, oh my God, we have all the agents on the buyer's team have all these people who they have in their brains and in their databases that they're like, oh my God, so-and-so has been waiting for a house with a lake or something that's a little bit on the bigger side, or, whatever it is. And then, there's a truism about how like the first offer is the best offer, because it's like that person who's been waiting for it. I mean, now the first offer is often like one of like 25 offers that come in a weekend. But, like in general, the truism is first offer is the best offer, because that person's been waiting for exactly that house and they know the value of it, and they come in and they like make an offer and they're ready to rock and roll. The same is really true with the off-market listings, that like generally those deals stick. Like they tend to, it's not necessarily a buyer who's like going out and seeing like 5,000 other things just in case something better is on the market. It's like they know what they want, they've been waiting for it, we're able to put them together, they're able to come to a meeting of the minds with the sellers, and we're good to go. Now, and again, like I would say the thing to keep in mind is that pretty much in the negotiations initially for price and the negotiations for inspection, the seller in my mind really has the upper hand, because they can just be like, yeah, no, we're just going to put it on the market, which doesn't mean that they do that. And it doesn't mean that they might really find it attractive to not have to show it and not have to like clean their house and do all that stuff. And I will say that like, one thing I will say that's kind of maybe not counterintuitive, but like a lot of these deals for us happen after we've already gotten everything ready for the MLS. So after we have photography, after we have the basic website, at least after we have photography. So we're getting like really close to the starting line of like broadcasting it to everyone. So, I mean, I think that like to some extent, like kind of knowing what you want is important when you're thinking about an off-market deal, because like you kind of got to go in, it's not for like somebody to browse really, right? I mean, I think it's like, you're like, yeah, this fits all the criteria. Angelica, do you have anything that you would say about like the process of
the off-market process?
Yeah.
I mean, on the seller side, I think basically you get to name your make me move price, right? Which is a big thing. And then you don't have to show your house a million times. It's super appealing to just be like, okay, great, I'm going to show it to this one person who's a client of your team, and they'll take it or leave it. And this will be really easy. Also really awesome because it's a team deal, and you have an agent from the team on either side of things. You have a transaction coordinator on either side of things who know each other, and we all work together seamlessly. And it just makes the deal like way easier. And just go smoothly and go faster.
Right. So I guess that's the other thing to say is that like, if you're getting an off-market deal with our team, we're almost always going to be serving as dual agents. So that like, I mean, basically always, that's what we like to do. Like there are some weird circumstances where maybe a seller would say, I want you to 100% represent me. And the buyer would say, then the buyer wouldn't have any representation, but we like to work as dual agents, which means that we essentially don't represent either side legally. We facilitate the transaction, which, as Angelica said, is like, it's I don't know, in so many ways, it's very like clean, and it's often very collaborative, because it's like, you just have you're not like 2 steps away from each other. You're sort of like all in one like big pot trying to like make things work. So if you find something like you do the inspection and you're like, nobody knew that the roof was about to collapse, You just like kind of get together and figure out like, hey, how do we want to do it? Which again, in my mind is not that different from like a buyer's agent when you're working with a buyer's agent saying like, okay, you're in a situation, being in an off-market situation as a buyer, in my mind, is very similar to, it's almost like, it's like, no, it's similar to having won a multiple offer situation where you know there's a bunch of backups. So it's the same thing. Like if you have an inspection and you're like, hey, nobody knew the roof was about to collapse, and this is something that you're going to have to disclose to everybody else, the seller might help with that. You know what I mean? That really is something they might help with. If you're like, hey, this like the hot water tap is a little loose, like I want a $500 credit for that, the seller's going to be like, you're difficult, I'm moving to offer number 2. And just in the same way, they could be like in an off-market deal, they can be like, you're difficult, I'm putting this on the market. So I think that that's, you know, but again, like nobody is asking anybody to do anything they don't feel like comfortable with, you know, like it's like up until the point of contract, you're still just like, is this okay? Like, so maybe you're in an off-market deal and the seller's like, I'm not compromising on price. And then you find out the septic system has exploded and the roof is collapsing and whatever. Then if the seller's like, I'm not going to negotiate on price, as a buyer, you still can just be like, okay, bye. You know, you don't ever have to move forward. And like the idea, and especially when we're working to facilitate the transaction, and even when working one-on-one, is always like, what are you comfortable with? Like, dear seller, what are you comfortable with, dear buyer? And like, where's the Venn diagram where those overlap? Like that's our job when we're dual agents.
Which is really a lot easier when it's an intra-team transaction, because so many times when you're dealing, you know, like as a buyer's agent, I'm dealing with a listing agent who is often kind of adversarial in a lot of situations, and you're dealing with someone who's like, yeah, it's your opposition, and they don't want to see things move smoothly for whatever reason, or they're very difficult to deal with. Like if you're doing an off-market deal with us, you know that Danny and Chelsea are the listing agents on the other side who are amazing, and they want the transaction to move forward as much as we do.
Right. And then there's like, so there's the listing agents working on that side, there's a buyer's agent on this side, then there's a transaction coordinator for the buyer side and a transaction coordinator for the seller side. So there's like at least 4 people watching to make sure that that deal is moving forward and that everything's like okay. And that is a lot of eyeballs on one deal. So
client feels supported the whole way through.
Yeah. So I think that like, I mean, I think that the way, I mean, interestingly, so like, let's say you happen to be by some poor judgment or lack of information working with another agent, not from our team. No, just kidding. Am I there? The way I would think that you're going to hear about off-market deals, and honestly, this is like, we should do another one of like, how do you like hear about anything if you're working with a buyer's agent, is like, you be the person who has clear wants and needs and are serious. That's how you're going to be the one who we think of calling. Because if like, if you're, you know, if you're like, okay, yeah, I don't know, like maybe we're thinking of a tiny house. And so we, you know, go out and look at tiny houses for a day. And then it's like, I don't know, like now I think we want like an enormous house. Go look for enormous houses. Like that can work as you're trying to determine your criteria. But if it's just sort of like, I don't feel like something is happening here, we're not going to, like, let's say we get an enormous house then off market, you're not going to be the person we think of first versus someone who's like, I want a house that's 4 bedrooms with a pool that has some historical character that's in this area. Like we're going to like, you know, you're just going to like, you just take up more mind share, not just for the off market houses, but for anything we see coming online. I think that's true. So like, I think that the more that you communicate with your agent too is a way to like nab any kind of deal. Cause we have we have our off market Slack channel, and then we have our houses we should sell Slack channel, where all of us are putting in the houses that we see across these 10 counties that we think we should sell to someone because they're awesome. Same thing, so you want to be, I think, top of mind with your agent too. And that's not like, yeah.
Agent knows other agents, not on the team. And like, I've asked other listing agents, been like, oh, like whatever, like this listing, my client wants it, something just like this, just like a bigger one. And I know you do a lot of volume in this particular town. Like, call me as soon as you get something like that, and like,
okay,
relationships.
I'm so glad that you said that, because that's that is the other thing that is not like necessarily known, is that agents are allowed to show off-market, they usually how it works, they can show off-market listings. Like if we have an office exclusive, even though it's called, the name is office exclusive, other agents can show that. Like, so we can work that out for other agents to show it, which absolutely, and so that what Angelica said is absolutely true. So we have people call us, we call other agents and say, what do you got? What do you got going here? Like what's coming up? And for Keller Williams, like now our office is the biggest single office, I think in Ulster County, they were saying. So the Kingston office has almost 100 agents. So when we're sharing like, oh, here's something that we have coming up, which we usually share, we always share it with our, we usually share it with our clients first because we want to see if anybody like wants to jump. But then, yeah, so that's the other thing, is that people can call and say like, hey, what have you got? And if somebody is willing to pay more, like, then that's great. And if we've had homes that we've shown, the good thing about doing things off market too is that like we've had homes that we've shown like 3 or 4, like the farm that we ended up buying in Accord, we had as an off market listing. Like we were getting it ready, he was doing a bunch of work to get it ready, and so I think Angelica, you showed it like
2 or 3 times.
Right? I was gonna say 2 or 3 times, and nobody bought it. But in that time period, so it's like, so that could be information that's either like, oh, maybe we're thinking a too high of a price for this property. In this case, this is actually a really good example. I was just like, I never want this property to go on market. All of a sudden, I realized how perfect it would be for our team and our business and me and my husband, like all of the things. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I don't care if I'm paying significantly over the, like market value. Like, even if that's true, like we basically decided on a price that was like the usual thing. Like, this is what we think you could get, the most we think you could get if it went on the market. We agreed to that. And luckily it appraised just a little bit above that. So I didn't feel like a total a-hole not being able to negotiate for myself. But it was like, I don't want somebody to come in who has a similarly like strong desire or like some other specific need. In that case, same thing as I sold my house in Kingston off market. Now that one I kind of regret because I feel like we could have gotten, I think we probably could have gotten like $100,000 more if we had done it on market. But this is like why. So buying off market things, sometimes you can take advantage of dumb sellers like me who literally are like, I cannot figure out how to get my house painted and the door fixed on the bathroom. So I will like just sell it as is to not have to deal with all that stuff so I can focus on my business and the rest of my life. So it doesn't even mean, so I just want to like state for the record that when I'm saying that if you're getting an off-market deal and you're paying more than it would be listed for, it doesn't mean that you would pay more than the actual market value. And that is the point, is that the market value is still just a little bit vague at that point. So if I had like, the people who bought the house in Kingston, like they paid more than I would have listed it for, probably, maybe not even, whatever. but if I put it on the market, it could have gone up $100,000 more because I might have been guessing low. I think we were guessing low. So that's the point, is that like, it doesn't, even if you're paying, even if somebody says, hey, we're going to list this at 350, but the off-market price is 400, it doesn't mean that it wouldn't, like, it could go to 525. So it doesn't mean that the market value is higher. It just means you don't know. So, which gets us back to the thing always, which is how much is a place worth for you in your exact specific financial, personal, professional life. And that is it. And that is the only way to determine how you know if a property is right for you. Same thing for the seller. How much money would you take to sell a house? We have had off-market listings be able to be negotiated sometimes a little bit lower.
Yeah, because a bird in hand is better than 2 in the bush. And a lot of sellers are going to be like, oh, well, I can take my chances by putting this on the market and maybe not get any offers.
Right.
Or maybe have to sell it below my asking price. Or I can go with this person who's like offering me a little bit less than my like dream price, but it's still a really good price.
Yeah. So it's so I think that like, I can't remember, but this is some like huge percentage of the real estate market. Like, I feel like it's not just us, like 20%. I think that might be like actually statistically where it's at, which is why the National Association of Realtors was like, hey, we got to put a stop to this. Like, it's not fair. It's not clear. And what it does, and this is kind of interesting, is that it benefits the way the current, so whatever. Nobody cares about this. Insider baseball. I'm going to tell you anyways, because you're captive audience. The US Justice Department just like reneged on a settlement agreement with the National Association of Realtors about a different issue because they're probably going to sue them about this issue or go after them about this clear cooperation because it seems non-competitive in a number of different ways. And one of the unintended consequences was that this policy helped big brokerages and hurt small ones. So Zillow now is a brokerage in a lot of states. Zillow could announce an off-market listing to every agent in their like brokerage across like, whatever across the country. Huge brokerages could do an off-market listing, an office exclusive, and announce it to, hundreds of agents. Or even us, we have so many buyers, and so many connections that this is like, we're cool with this. But like a little person who only has the one listing and their client doesn't want to list it on the market for whatever reason, they have no way to sell it. Like they can't, like they just don't have that network really. So it's an interesting thing. And it is something that probably will change in the next, I would say, year or so again. But it was a big change to the industry to not be able to advertise these. So yeah, I think that like in this market, you just got to get like, and I would say that the market is like a hair less frantic than it was. It may just because it's summer and everyone's doing
A
summer.
lot of buyers are on vacation. So instead of getting 15 offers, we're getting 6.
Right, exactly. So, and I think that that's like, and so I think what's going to be interesting is to see what happens in September, October, which is traditionally the biggest time of the year in the Hudson. I mean, it's like spring and then fall are like the two biggest times. But so it's like, if I say like one thing here, I would say, don't get discouraged if you're looking at this market and you're like, I'm never going to get anything. Like you might have to change your criteria. If you've like started looking 3 years ago, the prices will be different for what, for what you get for a price is going to be different now. That's just like a fact. Doesn't mean you can't get a house. And I think the prices are still going to go up. So I would still absolutely recommend finding something now. But I think that working with agents who do have these kind of opportunities to show you things before they go to market and have the connections and the like willingness to get on the phone and call other agents and see if they have anything. And also to be the kind of agents like we are too, where somebody might call us and say, oh, hey, just FYI, I have this thing coming up. Like that's
a lot of agents know that we have such like a huge client base and such wonderful buyers that they're going to be like, hey, like I have this coming. Can you please bring a buyer?
And I think that like we are, I think we're I mean, whatever, we're not perfect, but we have a very good system and a very good team. So if we're on the other side of a deal, like generally stuff is gonna go forward. I mean, not always, like things, things happen, but like it won't usually be because of like we're totally dropping the ball on things.
Other agents like doing deals with us.
Yeah, because we have divided up the different tasks so that the right people are doing the different things. So I think it makes sense. So does anybody have any questions or any other ideas about, I mean, I guess the one thing I would say is that the one thing that's a little bit tricky about off-market deals is that usually like you're gonna hear about them if you're working exclusively with an agent. So if you just call an agent and say like, I'm working with a bunch of different people, what do you have off market? I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, if you're like an amazing buyer, maybe they would share it with you, but if they don't know anything about you and they don't know like how serious you are, you're going to be like less likely, I would say, to hear about things than again, if you're like working with somebody and you're like, this is like, we together have defined the goals for the search, and not together, but like we've helped you refine your goals for the search and we understand it and we're keeping our eyes open. So, but it's like I said, it's for us, it's like we went from not doing it. So let me say one other thing about why would an agent not want to do everything off market? So this is also interesting because it's like, as Angelica said, like I mean, for us, it's kind of great. We just get to keep the whole deal in-house. We get the full commission. We get the whole thing. Like it looks like you would want to do everything. Now, what I will say is that we will find our buyers another house if they're not buying this house. So it's not like you get double commission, really. You're just putting the two puzzle pieces together, in this way, instead of like this seller finding a different buyer and this buyer finding a different house. But it worked for us. It works. We know how our team works and we know how efficient it is. So it is a lot less time and stress and whatever usually. But here's like one of these other like weird, more like insider baseball things. But listings are what generate business for most real estate agents. So listings generate more listings generate buyer leads. And so many agents would not even want to suggest this to their seller because they would rather have the listing go live, so let's say 50 buyers call about that listing and only one of them can buy it, or maybe not even your buyer buys it, you end up with 50 buyer leads. And then that's great. And then another person in that town sees it, or people see your signs when you're driving, when they're driving by and think like, oh, maybe we can list this also, or we can list with them too. So because the way that our team works also, like it doesn't like we get enough leads already, like, doing other things. And so we can afford to think about what is like really the best situation for the seller and the buyer. And that's it. And it's like, there are times when it's like me as the head of the team, like, I'm like, oh man. And because we've had some houses that are so freaking cute and amazing that you guys never got to see on Instagram. You never got to see anywhere, and we even have like videos of things.
Kills Megan when she can't put these on Instagram.
I know, I know. So it's like, but it's like, if this works for the buyers and sellers, doesn't matter, that's it. But so it's just like, I just think sometimes it's helpful to understand people's motivations when you're working with agents, and why, like,
Most listing agents would not want to do things off market. They want everyone to see, I sold this house, it's marketing for them.
well, right. And also so the other thing that happens when you sell something off market, and this is kind of another weird thing that you wouldn't think impacts any decisions, but it doesn't get counted it doesn't go into a multiple listing service. So it doesn't get counted in the things that say, I'm the number one agent in Ulster County, or the number one agent in Dutchess County, or whatever it is, because it doesn't appear on that MLS, and those words and things are given out that way. Our team, because we work across 5 MLSs, and because we share deals, and because we're a team, there's no, like, we are one of the biggest teams, probably the biggest team in the whole area, but we're never going to probably win those awards because everything's divided up in different ways. So you have to also, as an agent, two things have to be true for that, actually. One is that you have to not care about it, or, and two, your brokerage has to not care about it. So a lot of brokerages, so on top of like the agent not wanting to do it, the brokerage will discourage agents from doing off-market things, because it's, Keller Williams is great. Our Keller Williams Hudson Valley North is amazing because they don't like really care. Like, they're just like, you guys brand yourself. Like, we don't need to be branded. But like another brokerage might say, like, we want our signs everywhere. We want to show that we're listing this stuff. We want to do that. So it's like kind of a double whammy of pressure, actually. But yeah, we don't care. we're just trying to do the best thing by, the right thing by our like sellers and buyers, and to like make the process as smooth as possible. And so that's it. But I guess, like, yeah, I mean, I don't have any like other super secret places that you can look for these things. But I would say that, like, again, I'm just gonna say again for the record, and doesn't have to be working with us, but if you find an off-market deal, just like out of the blue, if your neighbor approaches you or whatever, I would pay an agent to represent you. I just would. I just think that, like, that advice and help is going to be 100%. These are big purchases. They are very, very big purchases. Even to see if does the price seem normal, where are you going to negotiate, like, whatever it is, like, I would pay an agent to represent you. So that is my personal opinion. Anyone have any questions, comments, anything else? All right. Oh, I wonder if we could show the Slack channel with our off market. No. We have some good things in the pipeline. I'll just put it that way. So
Megan, I had a quick question.
sure.
What areas upstate do you focus on? I came in a little late, so you may have already said.
Yeah, sure. I don't know that we explicitly said it. So we focus on almost everything that is like 2.5 to 3 hours outside of the city. So Ulster, Sullivan, Orange, Putnam, Dutchess, Columbia, Greene, Delaware, Schoharie.
But also we do a lot in Orange.
I didn't say Orange. Orange, yeah.
And I think at least one deal in Westchester has happened. So
Yeah, so we cover a pretty broad area. We've just found that like our buyers are, this has been true even when I was like working as a solo agent up here. It's like 80% of people were pretty location agnostic. They just kind of wanted to be within 2.5 hours of the city or 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever that was. But then, and to be in a town with some certain characteristics, but not, they had some flexibility. That's actually where the magic is for our listings, I think, because if we can get our listing, like the listings in Rhinebeck that we have this week, in front of people who are looking in Woodstock or looking in Cold Spring or looking in Athens and would consider Rhinebeck, then we're getting it in front of people who wouldn't see it if they were just looking on Zillow or working with an agent in one of those other towns. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, we cover a big area.
Right. And you probably already said how to get the best off-market deals if you're looking to invest. Are you an agent who specializes in that?
We don't specialize in it, but what we do is we were saying that for the listings that we have coming up, we usually offer them off market to people working with our team 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yep.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I guess I'll put like, I should always put our little new buyer questionnaire. It's always in my Instagram, the Upstate Curious profile, but like it's Upstate me, new buyers. If anybody wanted to work with one of the buyers agents on our team. For sure, also get on our newsletter, because the newsletter, in addition, so one of the rules about the new clear cooperation policy from National Association of Realtors is that you can advertise things 24 hours in advance, and you can have coming soon listings. There's all these like weird new kind of like rules. So the newsletter, everybody gets 24 hours in advance notice to when we're listing things. So that is definitely good to know also.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Well, if nobody has any other questions, then it was nice to see everybody here. And yeah, we hope to help you find some secret exciting deals or just regular deals soon. All right. Bye.